What I came to realize was that if we had a fiduciary standard that was toward the truth, toward people, toward democracy, and toward the planet, that a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the world would just go away overnight. And you could still have the incredible entrepreneurial energy, the competitiveness, and all of that that has made our growth through the capitalist kind of society really sing for us. But we'd know that it was of the people, by the people, and for the people at the same time.
Imagine waking up in a world where every institution, your bank, your government, your newsfeed was legally and morally required to put your best interest in the planet's ahead of its own. That's not a sci-fi script. That's the world today's guest is actively trying to build. Welcome back to Money Matters. I'm Chris, and today I'm joined once again by George Kinder, the father of life planning and the mind behind the new Fiduciary in all things movement, FIAT. Last time George was here, we talked about how to design a life of freedom around what matters most to you. This time we're zooming out. What happens when civilization itself becomes fiduciary? How do mindfulness and deep listening turn into political and cultural change? And what does all of this mean for you, your money, and your future? If you're a financial advisor or just someone who's tired of not knowing who to trust, this episode is for you. George, welcome back to the show.
Great to be back, Chris. That was yeah, you nailed it in terms of what we're after here. Well done.
Awesome. I have a list of questions here I'm going to go through, and I don't want to miss that opportunity while I have you on the show. On the other hand, I do want to catch up a bit. And you have actually, from the last time we talked to now, you moved outside of the U.S. You've got a whole thing that we're going to go into and pick your brain there. But how was that? How was the transition and the move and everything?
Well, it's been very exciting, and it's a little strange for somebody who should have been retired many, many, many years ago, if not decades ago, to be doing, because I'm launching a startup over here in London, and it's a global startup. So I'm back in the States a lot, but I've become more of a global kind of citizen and thinking globally. And as you know, I do that anyway.
Yeah.
I want to make the world a better place. That's what we're all about here. So been very exciting.
I think that way too, as a global citizen. It's like, how can we leave the planet better than we found it? Well, so it's been over a year since we did that episode. And the last time you were on the show, you've launched the Fiduciary in all things movement. How do you describe FIAT to someone who's hearing about it for the very first time?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, FIAT is an acronym for Fiduciary in all things. And the first thing that I've had to learn and recognize is that not everybody knows what fiduciary means.
This is true.
So I'm going to go back to that. You and I are in the financial industry, so it's a term that's used quite a bit, and it's occasionally controversial, but it's a great term. It comes from the Latin fides, which means trust or trustworthy, and or truth, and so fiduciary as a standard, it's considered a standard, and a fiduciary standard is one that is dedicated to your clients ahead of your own self-concern. If you're a democracy, Abe Lincoln said it best. He said, it's of the people, by the people, and for the people. So it's a fiduciary standard toward people. In finance, in the stock market and all that, one of the underpinnings of capitalism, and it's controversial because it's got an edginess that doesn't always satisfy us, is that you place the shareholders first. And so what fiduciary in all things is about is noticing that there have been, economists call them, again, a big term, negative externalities. These are unintended consequences of various corporate or government activities of large organizations. And what I came to realize was that if we had a fiduciary standard that was toward the truth, toward people, toward democracy, and toward the planet, that a lot of the problems that we're seeing in the world would just go away overnight. And you could still have the incredible entrepreneurial energy, the competitiveness, and all of that that has made our growth through the capitalist kind of society really sing for us. But we'd know that it was of the people, by the people, and for the people at the same time.
So I forget we're in the industry. When we throw fiduciary around a lot, But for somebody who's outside of the industry, it's good to go back and say, truth, the root of that word is definitely a good thing. And some of the things here, we talked about democracy and how this could work for in not just our industry, but outside of our industry. When you came here last time and we talked, you had just written the book where we dived into those domains of freedom, right? Each moment, your life and civilization. How did that framework evolve into the foundation for the Fiat movement?
So the book is called, do you mind?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just going to show it. Here we
absolutely,
go.
absolutely.
It's still fresh,
Nice.
and it's an easy read, and it's profound. So if you want to kind of dive into deep thinking about where we are and where you are in your life, because it's also about each person's life. So it's the three domains of freedom. Each moment is yours. Your life is yours. Civilization is yours. So each moment is yours. Each of these, I've been passionate about freedom, Chris, since I was born. I think it goes way, way back. But certainly in my adult life, really passionate about freedom. So I've explored it for myself. That's each moment is yours. So how do we make it so that every moment in our life, we feel that experience? People call it happiness, but I think it's more than happiness. It's more like joy or flourishing in some way. So how do we do that? And that's been one of my passions. And then for clients as a financial advisor, and this was also true for my own life, how do we make the story of your life, the trajectory of your life, one that is constantly moving you toward greater layers of freedom in your life? And so that's the second one. You ask, well, how does this all get to fiat? Well, the third domain of freedom is civilization. And that's one that I think up until the last 10 or 20 years, we didn't question that much. We thought, yeah, we're all moving forward. We know what that is. Democracy is it, basically, and we're moving forward with it. But I think we've come to doubt it in many ways. And the polarized society that we have right now, the feeling of dystopia, of really crazy times, and civilization is yours, is something that I think as a species, we're now coming to a place where humanity covers the whole earth and can speak to each other. So it's like humanity has come together, even though we see ourselves polarizing, breaking apart, maybe three great cultures, maybe four. I don't know whether they're great cultures, but they're powerful cultures. And so I believe that humanity is meant to govern themselves, really. And so the notion is, how do we move from this time that is challenging for us right now into something that will actually work sustainably for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, going forward generations, many generations ahead. I went on a world tour. I probably told you about that, where I went from country to country all over the world to find out what people wanted. And they want the same thing. And so what I did was, they want kindness, they want entrepreneurial endeavor, they want an end to corruption, they want an end to war, they want adequate food, shelter, and health for everybody. And they want an end to bigotry. Well, we all want those things, I think, most of us, almost all of us. So fiat was a way of shrinking it into a single sentence, asking or insisting that all organizations place those values of truth, democracy, the planet, and people ahead of their own self-concern. That all came out of civilization.
The idea of self-govern, starting with that's a lofty goal. I love that as a goal. The idea, I don't remember talking to you about the world tour, but the idea of talking to everybody and them seeing those same things, kindness, having good health, ending to corruption and bigotry, those are great goals to aspire to for sure. And it started with these three ideas here: the idea of the self, the story of your life or your client, if it's coming from an advisory perspective, and then the idea of civilization. And you talked about democracy and us being polarized, and we all kind of feel this right now. But there's the other side of it, the positive side, where we're global citizens and there's a network and we're all able to communicate. And so that I love that as a basis and where you've built this from. One of the things you just mentioned earlier was institutions. You said institutions, today often act in their own self-interest. How does Fiat challenge that? And what would a truly fiduciary institution look like?
I'm pausing because I want everybody to hear that question. That's such a profound question. And I think it's something, as I went around the world, I felt that it was something that every country longed for. And one of the things I didn't mention a moment ago is that everybody wants to know that when they're told things by media, and now we've got social media everywhere, that they can trust that it's truthful and not twisted or polarized. So when you ask about what would a truly fiduciary institution look like, it would speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It would really put its people, as well as its consumers and its community, first, ahead of its own self-interest. So you'd feel the goodness radiate. One of the things that I think is really beautiful about it is I've crafted as a single sentence legislative proposal. And one of the things that I think is really beautiful about it is that it would mean that to become the CEO of a great organization, of a great corporation, nonprofit or government, you would have to be really well trained, almost educated, like you go to business school, and instead of just being focused on the numbers, you'd focus a lot on what it is to have integrity. You'd focus a lot on what it is to be of service to people. You'd focus a lot on, hey, is our advertising really truthful, or is it twisting the truth this way or that way? You'd focus on how would democracy function if we weren't pushing our own agendas? If it really were working for people, how would it function? So you'd have people, we'd look at our business leaders, and instead of having mixed feelings about many of them, they'd be heroes. I mean, one of the things, I don't know, you may have young kids. I have kids that are now in university, but forever I was like, where are the heroes for our kids? And you would see them. They'd be everywhere because FIAT would make sure that leaders throughout our society put the truth, democracy, people on the planet ahead of their own selfish, self-centered concerns.
So that sounds radical, right? But it really should be part of democracy and what we're used to, and really just this, some of the things you mentioned, the ideas of integrity and service, and really that trust, being able to know that these organizations are trustful. You mentioned the media, social media, and making sure that the things that are coming out are just bottom line, plain language, concise, truthful, right? In a big T way. So, and that's the idea that it's one sentence for the legislation. It's concise language, but it's as simple as that. That really speaks to the point there. Now, you mentioned a year ago when we talked that you had that legislative proposal related to building a fiduciary civilization. Has that proposal advanced or taken new shape? Is that what we are talking about today?
Yeah, we're talking about exactly the same thing, which I think is a virtue, because it is so simple. It was designed so that it could be talked about in every country, in every culture, in every language or ethnicity. The people would understand it, and the notion then at that point I was just launching it, and now we're seeing people beginning to talk about it. So I have a steering committee, and the steering committee has people. They can be from any walks of life. They could be living at home with their kids. They could be an entrepreneur. They could be a teenager, or a retired person. But or they could be people that are actually in positions of significant leadership. We want everybody. It's a grassroots movement. And so the notion, already people are starting to social media post on their own about it and spreading word about it. So what I see really happening is more podcasts, more conferences are reaching out either to me or to other people to speak about it, and more interviews. And so I think what we're seeing is that it's just beginning to get into the language. And mainly I've emphasized the financial industry because that's been where I've grown up and the people who know me. So they're my low-hanging fruit. So it's become quite well known there, and I think it's about to take a major leap forward there. And you take a major leap forward there, and it spreads everywhere. So that's really what's happening legislatively. I think the most interesting thing that I've seen is someone proposed that there's this question about Citizens United that has allowed corporations to buy, essentially to buy votes. They get to put a lot of money into the democratic system. And there was so that we could actually diminish that, not by having to make a constitutional amendment, not by having to win all of Congress to get this vote, because it's so difficult to do that. But just if one state were to say, if you intervene in politics as a corporation, you can't do business here. And that could be done. Just one state. If one state were to do that, that would impact, the country really in a significant way. So there are ways to get it more toward legislation by narrowing the focus to communities that really care about it, really want fiat to work.
I think that's just an awesome message, and the idea that it's growing and that we're getting the word out about it. You mentioned being on different podcasts and conferences, and that I'm getting derailed here a little bit, because I remember you were going to be at Future Proof, and I was looking forward to it. And then you got COVID. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I got COVID. Sorry, I didn't get to reach.
No, that is all right. I'm hoping that they will have you back. I'm hoping that will happen, because that was something I was looking forward to. So, and as we get this message out, I think that'll be great. But it's going past the advisory services. That's your stopping ground, right? So that's what we're used to. But you gave the idea of it getting into legislation and just one state starting it, kind of like a domino effect. You get something like that and it gets going. Let me pivot just a little bit, because I'd love to talk about mindfulness. And with you on the show, you've long taught that mindfulness makes people better listeners and therefore better advisors. How does deep listening play into the FIAT framework on a societal level?
Well, I'm going to take you someplace that's pretty wild here and pretty deep. First of all, listening is such an extraordinary thing that we do for each other. And if we think about what a great civilization would be and a great democracy would be, it would be this web of all of us really listening to each other in a respectful way, learning from each other, disagreeing certainly at times, and voting differently, but still really listening. And so I think of civilization as based on our thinking, on thought. We've put signposts down, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all of our laws, they're all thought-based. And that's a great thing. But listening is actually more profound. It goes deep inside of us because we can do inner listening. There was actually a study of listening by the Scientific American reported on exactly a year ago in December of 2024. And that study taught us something extraordinary. And that is that listening is much, much faster than thinking. And I mean, so fast you won't believe it. It's 100 million times as fast as thinking, because all of our senses are picking up this information from all around us constantly. And that means that there's layers of information, of knowledge, and certainly of wisdom that is embedded in listening deeply that we don't tap or we don't touch because we're so busy going with our thoughts and then clinging to our thoughts. So I think that if I'm a visionary thinking about what the next 1,000 years will be like, I would say we're moving from an era of great thinking, or maybe the next 5,000 years for all I know, we're moving from an era of great thinking to great listening. And it's a profound shift. And what it means for fiat and for companies and for democracy and for civilization is that organizations like businesses, I want any business I engage with to be listening to its communities and listening to the earth. What is it that the earth needs to be really sustainable? What is it that humanity needs? So I want great listening. And I'll give you, this is the place where I'm going to take you way off into this sphere here. So as a visionary, I've been thinking, what I'm looking around, where are the organizations that are sustainable for millennia? Do we have any? Is democracy the way we have it sustainable for millennia, or any of our business organizations? And I think we'd be hard pressed to say yes. I think we pretty much would go, I don't think we're there yet. And so I just look outside me, and in this window over here in front of me, there's a tree. And almost everywhere you look, you can see trees, maybe less so in the desert, but pretty much everywhere you can look, you can see a tree. A tree is an organization. It's an organization of, let's just talk about the leaves. We're not going to talk about the roots and the fungi, but it goes all through it. But a tree is clearly sustainable and has a sustainable organization that has gone for hundreds of millions of years, right? It's like, wow, it knows how to do it. So how does a tree behave? Well, those leaves, a large oak tree will have as many as 500,000 leaves. So it's up there with our biggest companies, right? 500,000 leaves. And each of those leaves is listening to the world around it. It's listening to insects. When they begin to bite it, it sends chemical signals down to the rest of the tree, warning all the other leaves, hey, watch out for these insects. When the rain comes, it listens to the rain, it pulls the rain into the tree. When the wind blows, those leaves, we get such joy looking at trees when the wind is blowing, don't we? I mean, we're just like, oh my God, it's alive. It's so beautiful, right?
Yeah.
We get so touched
Yeah.
by it, but they're listening for the flexibility of the branches and all that. It listens to the sun, photosynthesis. It listens to the chemical composition of the air. And this is the greatest thing about it. So it breathes in carbon dioxide and it breathes out oxygen. So you and I can sit here from thousands and thousands of miles away from each other and have this incredible, deep, and meaningful conversation, all because trees are breathing the carbon dioxide in and breathing oxygen out. And they never have to, you never see the CEO of a tree cut its head off and take it and park it in some billionaire paradise off separate from everything else. It's integrated, it's sustainable. And so listening, I think, is what this next, not just generation, but millennia will be really about. We're about deepening our listening throughout culture.
I love it. Yeah, what a great answer there. So, one of my favorite things to do, I know we talked about, I have 5 acres of off-grid property and it's in a pine forest. And one of the things that I love to do is just sit out and listen to the wind go through the trees. It is my quiet spot. It is where I like to go. So I love that. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about, over this past years, there have been societal or political shifts. What social or political shifts reinforce your belief that fiat is needed now more than ever?
I'm really excited about AI. I mean, that's the big thing everybody's talking about. And I'm excited about its potential for helping us in so many ways. And yet, we're all terrified about it. We're worried about jobs being lost. We're worried about people manipulating it for their own, again, back to self-concern. And so AI would be one thing where I'd go, fiat, if fiat were established, AI would have no choice but to serve the truth, democracy, people, and the planet. No choice at all. If it didn't, then whoever was promoting it would get punished in one way or another. So that's the most intriguing thing. But if you look politically, a couple of things were disturbing to me, politically and economically. One is that the cabinet of the current administration, it was all billionaires. And you go, oh, wait a minute, that's not the people. Where are the people?
We see a
here?
pattern there.
So and that's, who are they serving? And again, you wonder about that. And then the final thing is the statistic that I heard, you probably have heard it, that the 3 richest in America, and God knows they deserve to be wealthy for all that they've done, but the 3 richest in America own as much as 180 million people. And if you look at that, three versus, here, I'll put it on the screen, versus 180 million, can't put enough fingers in this room to get 180 million. But the thing is fiduciary means trustworthiness. It means care for, it means putting others' interests ahead of your own. Do we have a fiduciary society of the people, by the people, and for the people? Or is our fiduciary society for shareholders? Where does it weigh? And I think clearly it's weighing for shareholders right now. And that says, no, that's not sustainable. That won't work for the future. We've got too many dangers coming out of that. We needed to put the people first.
Yeah, that whole idea. Yes, if people aren't paying attention, the idea of what's become here and what we've seen with the billionaires outnumbering everybody, especially in the cabinet and the administration, definitely something it's on everybody's radar, I believe. But you started with AI, which is, it does have the potential to help. But there are the things, people losing jobs, and the idea of putting fiat on top of that, then things like ethics committees and things that we see other countries already ahead of the game on insisting on. So if you bake something like that into the pudding, there's no question here. They have to do the right thing here. So
if I can add one thing that is pretty amazing. So I've written an essay on truth, because a lot of people talk about we're in a post-truth era and truth is relative and all that. Well, we need a kind of a bell curve of truth. That's what my article was called. And because as citizens, we need to know that what we're voting on is basically true for our democratic purposes. We could have disagreements about it still, but we need to know the truthfulness of it. And AI could make that happen overnight. I mean, because AI can judge, how truthful is this? That's be a very simple function for it to take on. So in terms of the media being responsible toward the citizens of the country, and it's not that we don't want everything. It's not that we don't want wild theories. Galileo was once a wild theory, and we want his theory. We want those theories out there, but we need a bell curve so that the bulk of what we're getting, we know is true, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so that we can actually vote in a way that is responsible. Yeah. AI.
George, we could sit here and talk forever. I love where we're going with this conversation, but we've got just a few minutes here before the end. So I've got to probably pick one here. So let me go with this one. If institutions were to align their goals with humanity, democracy, and truth, the core of FIAT, what practical changes would everyday people notice first?
There'd be an end to polarization. Number one, we'd still have our differences, but we'd be able to speak with ease with each other and thoughtfully, respectfully to each other. There would be heroes, as I mentioned earlier, for the first time in several generations, perhaps. We would find ourselves looking up to people who had become successful, and people who were leading organizations rather than being quite skeptical about them. All of us would feel so much safer and feel that we could trust the civilization that we're in, the society that we were in. We would no longer be seeing corruption around us, and we would see real movement toward the end of war, the absolute end of it. So just amazing things would happen right away, setting up a civilization that our grandchildren will go, how could you ever live like you used to live? Because they will feel this difference in their life, this trustworthiness.
Wow. Every single one. They're awesome to aspire to. This is great. Just even ending polarization, having heroes again that we don't have to find out, 30 days later, what did they do in the news? Actual people of value, right? I love this. Being able to, really see an end to war and corruption. Huge thing to work towards. I love it. George, we're right here at the end of the show. Whatever I forgot to ask you that you'd like to leave listeners with today?
I think if you're a financial advisor, stand up for fiduciary and let the financial institutions around that they should become fiduciary in all things. So that's for financial advisors. And for consumers or people who are really interested in fiat, there's a site, fiduciaryinallthings.com, where you can go and you can speak about it. You can write a little pledge about why you like it. And you can catch a logo like the organic logo and put it on your headers and on your social media. And that would be very powerful in terms of spreading the movement. And I think the final thing is that what I'm doing over here in London is I'm bringing this movement into corporations as a way to make them more productive. And there's a couple of studies. One of them says happy workers make for far more productive businesses, but there the statistic is that it's only 13% more productive. The study that I work from is from Bain & Company, and it says that inspired workers are 125% more productive than a satisfied worker. So an inspired worker is something that I'm aiming to deliver into businesses. And we can do that through fiat. We can do that through great life planning. We can do that through mindfulness. But let's excite the workers about their lives. Let's give them support, real support from a corporate standpoint, and make your businesses 2 or 3 times as productive as they are right now.
I love this. So if you're driving in your car right now, don't worry. I'll have a link to this on the website for the podcast. George, thank you so much for being on the show today. Have a great rest of the day there.
Wonderful thrill to be here with you, Chris. Thanks so much. Yeah.